Okay, so hopefully as the thumbnail and title have already suggested for this video, today we are going to have a look at a full C1 advanced speaking exam. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to look at the instructions for the 4 parts, and we're also going to see two real candidates sitting the exam. And we're going to analyze how well they're answering the questions, how well they're interacting, all that kind of thing. So let's go. Let's have a look at the instructions for part 1, what you should expect. And then we'll have a look at the two candidates attempting part 1. Let's go. Okay, so let's have a quick summary of what the speaking exam entails. It says the C1 Advanced Speaking Test has 4 parts, and you take it together with another candidate. There are 2 examiners. One of the examiners conducts the test, asks you the questions, gives you the paper with the things to talk about, and so on. The other examiner listens to what you say and takes notes, so very similar to what we see at every level of the Cambridge exams. Basic summary here, it says time allowed 15 minutes per candidate, and 4 parts. You have to talk with the examiner, with the other candidates, and on your own, so nothing new here. Okay, so part 1 is the first thing we're going to look at here, the interview. It says what's in part 1? Well, it's a conversation between the candidates and the interlocutor. The examiner asks questions, and you may have to give information about your interest, studies, career, etc. Very, very simple. And what do you have to practice? Well, giving information about yourself and expressing your opinion about various topics. And it's going to take about 2 minutes. Very simple. Let's see how well our candidates got on.
Good morning. Take a seat, please. My name is Adam McGregor, and this is my colleague, Matthew Kingston. And your name?
I'm Luna Canadell.
Thank you. And your name?
I'm Ignacio Sepulveda.
Thank you. Can I have your mark sheets, please?
Sure.
Thank you. First of all, we'd like to know something about you. Luna, where are you from?
I'm from Madrid, Spain.
And how long have you been studying English?
I've been studying English since I was 5 years old.
Thank you. And Ignacio, where are you from?
I'm also from here, Madrid, Spain.
What do you enjoy most about studying English?
The fact that I can talk English to people on social networks and in real life, people that live in other parts of the world.
So far so good from both Luna and Ignacio. They're answering with concise, short answers of a couple of sentences, and they're really not making any mistakes at all. This is a really strong start by both candidates.
Ignacio, how important is it to you to spend time with your family?
It is quite important, as for example, for my dad. He doesn't spend a lot of time with us in Spain, as he kind of lives in Geneva working. So we really like and enjoy when he's here with us, and we enjoy our times with him.
I think me and the examiner, the interlocutor here, were both a little bit worried about what he was going to say about his dad there. He doesn't spend a lot of time with him. But no, a very good answer again. Excellent. Let's carry on.
Thank you. Luna, if you could travel to one country in the world, where would you go?
I would go to Maui, which is a Hawaiian island, and it's known for its stunning and relaxing beaches and for the surf, which I love.
And Ignacio, is it better to have a few friends or a wide circle of acquaintances?
Well, I think having a few friends that you really know are your friends and are not going to let you down is really important. Mm-hmm. But having a wide list of contacts, which you can contact and talk to, if you want something or another thing, that's also kind of really important.
Thank you.
And simple though it may seem, both Luna and Ignacio have got through that first part of the exam. That's it, that's finished. That's the first part done with of the speaking exam here, and they've done it absolutely excellently. Even with Ignacio there correcting himself from changing from talk with to talk to. I mean, it was absolutely perfect. I don't think it's possible to do it any better than they did. So it's time to move on to part 2, I think. What can we expect in part 2? Well, it's known as the long term, so I guess you can imagine, and well, let's have a look. And what's in part 2? The interlocutor gives you 3 pictures and asks you to talk about 2 of them. You have to speak for 1 minute without interruption, and the interlocutor then asks the other candidate to comment on what you have said for about 30 seconds. The other candidate receives a different set of photographs, and you have to listen and comment when they have finished speaking. The questions you have to answer about your photographs are written at the top of the page to remind you what you should talk about. So quite similar to first certificate, this a little bit more complicated. The response is 30 seconds instead of 20 seconds, and you've got 3 pictures instead of 2, but you still only have to talk about 2 of them, and it's very similar. What do I have to practice? Talking on your own about something, comparing, describing, expressing opinions, and speculating. Speculating's a big one, right? You have to say, perhaps what is happening here is whatever. How long do we have to speak? 1 minute per candidate plus a 30-second response from the second candidate. Okay, let's see how well Ignacio and Luna do this part.
In this part of the test, I'm going to give each of you 3 pictures. I'd like you to talk about 2 of them on your own for about a minute, and also to answer a question briefly about your partner's pictures. Luna, it's your turn first. Here are your pictures. They show people achieving things in different situations. I'd like you to compare 2 of the pictures and say what kind of difficulties the people might have faced and how they might be feeling now. All right?
Okay, so let's just take a moment to focus very carefully on these 3 pictures. What can we see? And look at the 2 questions that Luna is going to have to answer. What difficulties might these people have faced, and how might they be feeling now?
Okay, I will start with the picture where there's a group of people celebrating. They seem as they are graduating, maybe from high school or college. And they've certainly faced some difficulties, such as keeping up with all the work from college or the school, and also coping with all the problems they could have with their friends or colleagues. Whereas in the other picture, it seems as a rescue operation.
Oh, I hate to be a nitpicker, but she's made the same error twice there, even though it is only a small thing. She says it seems as a college graduation, or it seems as a rescue mission, something along those lines, she said. It seems like, and this is an expression that people get wrong all the time. Seems like, it looks like. However, I must say she is doing a really good job so far.
And one of the main disadvantages of this is the weather, because they are going by helicopter. So if it's windy or rainy, it's worse.
Again, just a small technical thing. Main disadvantages, obviously we are trying to compare things a lot, so the word disadvantage and advantage is probably in your head before you start the exam. But we're not talking about disadvantages here, we're talking about difficulties. But anyway, it's fine, it's fluent, it's perfectly understandable. Let's just carry on.
And also it's a dangerous situation because they might be at a high altitude. And in the first picture, they might be feeling overjoyed. They've finished their studies, they're graduating. And in this picture, the man who's rescuing the person in danger might be feeling relieved.
Thank you.
So maybe a small criticism here of Luna is that she kind of spent a lot of time speculating, talking about the difficulties, which is absolutely something she had to do, but then kind of rushed the last part of the task in saying how they might be feeling. No, but on the whole, I have to say, very, very good attempt there by Luna.
And Ignacio, which of these people do you think would feel most satisfaction from achieving their goals?
Well, in my own personal opinion, I think the one where they are graduating would be the most satisfying for them and achieving, because in the rescue operation, it's their work at the end of the day, so they might do more than one rescue operation each day, so every single one is not as exciting as the first one. Whereas in the graduation, it might be the only time they do it in their whole lives, so it's like an experience to remember.
I'm not entirely sure I agree with Ignacio's reasoning there, but I have to say he gave reasons for what he said. He said that the college students would be feeling greater levels of satisfaction than the the sea rescuers, the the people saving people's lives, because that's kind of boring after you've done one or two every day for the last few years. But he does say how the graduation from college is probably a unique experience in your life, and his reasoning, though I might not agree with it, is very sound. So well done, Ignacio. Let's see his turn now.
Thank you. Now, Ignacio, here are your pictures. They show people learning about things in different ways. I'd like you to compare two of the pictures and say how effective the ways of learning might be and how memorable the experience would be. All right?
Okay, time to focus again. Look at the three pictures that we can see here. Remember, we only speak about two of them, not all three. And the two questions: how effective might the ways of learning be? How memorable would the experience be? Okay, let's have a look.
So I think in this picture, where they are clearly building something, would be the most memorable and the most efficient way, because here is a normal classroom, a typical classroom. We've all gone through the experience of learning in this type of classroom, and we'll know it's not certainly the most interesting thing to do, as you just have to memorize what you are taught. Whereas here, it's a hands-on experience. You are working and cooperating with other people, as we can see here. So this might be more efficient because what you do, you'll remember longer, because it's just an experience you are not going to do every single day.
So I think Ignacio here kind of got the two questions mixed up. What's more memorable, as in a memorable experience, and which way is a more effective way of learning? It seems like he's kind of confused the two questions a little bit, and he keeps repeating efficient to try and get back on track, I think. And then he kind of pauses for a couple of seconds here. I think he realizes he hasn't done this in the most efficient way himself.
You can see people are enjoying themselves, whereas here you cannot see anyone laughing or grinning. So I think people here are going to remember this experience more than these ones.
Thank you.
So I think Ignacio made some fairly valid points in this answer, but yeah, I think if we're going to say which is the more effective way of learning, we're probably going to tend to say the classroom. I mean, you could certainly argue that the other one, being practical, is a better way of learning than just theoretical, of course. Depends on what you're learning, I suppose. But which is more memorable? Well, I suppose the uniqueness of building something together as a class is certainly going to stand out in your memory more than just a typical day at school, no? So I think that would be more or less how I would answer it, something along those lines. So not the best answer, I think, but it was more, I think he was just struggling to answer the question. I think it's always important to bear in mind that there is no correct answer in this kind of task. You just have to kind of speak your thoughts, think out loud. Anyway, let's listen to Luna.
Luna, which of these learning situations do you think would be the most effective?
I think this situation would be the most effective because they're working all as a group. They have to count on each other. They have to listen to the other's opinions. So they will know in the future how to cope with decisions between a group. So they're cooperating. That's why I think it's the most effective.
Okay, thank you. Can I have the booklet, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we can certainly see that in part two, both candidates have struggled a bit more than they did with the first part, which is natural. Let's see how they work together, how they can collaborate in part three. So part three, as I said, is the collaborative task. What is in part three? Well, it says a conversation with the other candidate. The examiner gives you spoken instructions with written prompts, which are used in a discussion. You have to talk with the other candidate for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes for groups of three, which very rarely happens, about the written prompts. After the discussion time, the examiner will ask you another question, which requires you to make a decision. You have 1 minute to talk together and make the decision, 2 minutes for groups of 3, which again is a rare situation. What do I have to practice? Exchanging ideas, expressing and justifying opinions, agreeing and or disagreeing, suggesting, speculating, evaluating, reaching a decision through negotiation, etc. And how long do we have to speak? 3 minutes, a 2-minute discussion followed by a 1-minute decision-making task. Let's have a look at our candidates.
Now, I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. Here are some different methods of communication and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task. Now, talk to each other about the advantages and disadvantages of these different methods of communication.
Do you want to start or shall I?
Okay, I'll start if you like.
Okay, that was good to see. Right from the off, they're interacting with each other. They're acknowledging that the other candidate is there. Very good. Let's see how well they do it.
So I think the most common way right now of communicating would be online chatting, as everyone has mobile phones nowadays, and we always have them on ourselves. So it's really easy to just send a text message to someone and wait for them to answer it.
Small detail again, but Ignacio's talking about how common it is to communicate with online chatting and talks about sending messages. I suppose what he's trying to say is that it's an advantage and it's the easiest way to communicate nowadays, but he needs to make that a little bit more clear.
Yes, I agree, but one of the main disadvantages of it is that you don't really know to whom you're talking to exactly. So it's not that reliable.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe a good alternative would be talking face-to-face.
Well, we'll see how this develops, but this is a fairly common problem in this task at C2, at C1 level, at C2 level, at B2 level as well. When you have to solve these problems, they tend to go round the prompts and say, oh no, that one's better than that one, that one's better than that one, that one's better than that one. That is the second part of the task when you have to reach a decision, a conclusion. It's not too bad so far, but what you don't want to do is get into this cycle of saying this one's better than the last one, this one's better than the last one. No, it's not an alternative yet. It's just advantages and disadvantages of these different ways of communicating.
It's like the most reliable way, but one disadvantage it would be maybe you have to require the other person to be with you in the same exact place. It cannot be in the other parts of the world, like only chatting can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's more like it. That's what we want. Some advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, talking face-to-face has the disadvantage of having to actually be in the place where the person you are talking to is, or vice versa, which is not a requirement of online chatting. Okay, good. Let's continue.
And also you can notice when someone's lying or when something's wrong between you two.
Yeah, so then maybe an alternative to that would be talking on the phone.
Yes, but sometimes it's not quite good. It's not that effective because, for example, my grandmother doesn't hear too well. So when we talk on the phone, it's really difficult for her to have a conversation with us.
So maybe using body language is something everyone understands. So it may not be as easy as to communicate using body language if you lack the social skills, maybe.
Oof, well, this is getting a bit confusing now. It's like they're trying to discard certain ways of communicating. Using body language, is that a way of communicating exactly? We could just pause for a second and say, well, using body language is something that you can only do when you're talking face-to-face, I suppose. You can't do it really online or speaking on the phone or through letters and postcards. So I don't think it's necessarily a way of communicating in and of itself, but rather something that can be mentioned when talking about these other methods of communicating.
I agree. Using body language is really difficult to see when someone's sad or when something's happening to them.
Maybe written letters and postcards is the different one from all of them, as it can also express emotions between countries, and that excitement you have when you receive a postcard, which is not really normal nowadays. We all use email or chatting. It's really nice to have.
Yeah, I mean, the bad thing is that they sometimes can get lost.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that didn't end brilliantly, I have to say. It is difficult. It is difficult, this part of the exam. I think the most important thing to bear in mind in part 2 and 3 is that there are no right and wrong answers, okay? You must sort of show your working, show your thought processes, show what you're genuinely thinking about this. It's okay to say, I don't know how body language can be spoken about. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, it's not like we use body language alone to communicate. It's okay to say, I've never written a letter, because in my case, I can't remember the last time I wrote a letter, and I'm 32. So I mean, it's I really doubt that these. How old are these kids? Like 18, 20? They probably haven't written letters in their life. So, I mean, it's okay to say that. So let's get on to the decision-making part of this task and see how well they do that.
Now you have about a minute to decide which 2 methods of communication are the most difficult to carry out effectively.
So which ones do you think?
I would start off with using body language. As we've already said, I mean, it's really difficult to notice. And well, what do you think?
Yeah, also body language, as it expresses a lot without us noticing. Or maybe if we talk using body language only, like mimics do, it's really difficult, but it can express more than we think it can express.
So it feels like they may have lost sight of the question, or perhaps not answering precisely the question that has been asked. Which 2 methods of communication are the most difficult to carry out effectively? So, okay, I think we started with body language here, but we need to say why it's difficult to carry it out effectively. Yes, it's perhaps difficult to interpret, but maybe we don't practice, a lot of us don't practice moving our body in a way that communicates our attitude and our thoughts.
Yeah.
Then maybe talking face to face is a really effective way of communicating.
Yeah, that's really effective. But one that wouldn't be that effective, for example, is written letters and postcards. Because, as you said, they can get lost and never get to where they had to
Yeah, and they are really slow. You have
Yes.
to wait for them to arrive. And maybe even the message is outdated because it's something that happened before and doesn't have a point now.
I agree.
Thank you. Can I have the booklet, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So well done to Luna there, particularly. I think she kind of saved it for both of them and redirected Ignacio into talking about something that was difficult to do effectively, a method of communication that was difficult to carry out effectively, and that's letters. And they both agreed that by sending letters and postcards, it's quite difficult to communicate your thoughts effectively, because obviously they can get lost or they can take a long time to get there, so the information may no longer be relevant by the time they arrive. Good, so let's have a look at the final part of the exam then, part 4. So part 4 is known as the discussion. What is in part 4? Further discussion with the other candidate based on the topics or issues raised in the task in part 3. The interlocutor asks each of you some questions and you discuss them with the other candidates. Very important. What do I have to practice? Expressing and justifying opinions, agreeing and or disagreeing. How long do we have to speak? There's 5 minutes in this final part. So let's have a look at Ignacio and Luna.
How important is it to be able to communicate well with others at school or at work?
So what do you think?
I think it's really important. At work, whenever you have to make a decision, you should really talk to your colleagues. So the goal that you want to achieve, it's the best.
Totally. And getting to know more people that can maybe interest you to get more businesses working or going on, it's really important. And in school, it's really important, for example, to carry out projects. You really have to have those social skills to carry it out and let everyone understand what you are trying to achieve.
Yes, I agree. And also to your friends, because then you wouldn't have a good relationship with them.
Yeah, it's also really good to have friends and be able to talk to them and communicate them everything that's happening to you, so they may understand and comfort you.
Okay, so you'll notice here that the examiner allows them to continue talking between themselves until their chat reaches a natural conclusion. So a little bit nervous, really, a little bit embarrassing, but they eventually reach some kind of agreement there and look up at the examiner for the next question. And I think they handled it pretty well, given it is a pretty awkward situation. So let's continue.
Can you learn good communication skills, or is it a part of someone's personality?
I think, first of all, it's part of you. For example, I'm very sociable. I always like talking to people I don't really know well. But also, I think you can get those skills if you practice.
Yeah, for example, for me, I've been an introvert for part of my life. But now that I have some success and I have to talk to more people, it really has opened my mind, so I can talk more people fluently, and be able to communicate them what's happening to me or ask them what's happening to them. So I'm getting some social skills in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, a very valid answer, and they used themselves as examples to answer what is a fairly complicated question. You know, it can run quite deep. How much of us is nature and how much of us is nurture, biology or environment? But okay, not too bad, not too bad.
How easy is it for older and younger generations to communicate nowadays?
Now younger generations are more with the mobile phones or electronic, maybe iPads or computers. For example, my brother is always downstairs playing with the PlayStation or with his iPad. So when my grandmother wants to talk to him, it's a little bit difficult, you know?
Yeah, maybe younger generations are losing those social skills we had before, because now everything's like digitalized. So
yeah.
Maybe that talking face to someone gets more difficult as they don't have those skills.
Yeah.
But for older generations, I think it's stayed the same, only they find it maybe a little bit more difficult to
talk with the younger generations.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it necessary for people to learn a foreign language?
I would say yes, it's necessary. I mean, if you want to stay in your country and not communicate with anyone else, okay, it wouldn't be necessary. But I mean, I think everyone deserves to travel, and if they want to travel, it's great to get to know other languages and cultures.
Yeah, maybe not even if you are going to travel, but it's good to know another language, because if someone visits you instead of you visiting them, it can be really useful to be able to talk to them and go to places, and you are establishing a relationship at the end of the day with a foreign person, which is really useful and really fun.
Yeah, that's true, and also even giving directions or helping someone out that's from another country.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, I haven't interrupted for a couple of questions now because, to be frank, they're doing quite a good job. They're speaking fairly naturally. All the points they're making are very valid. I think part 4 in many ways is a lot easier than parts 2 and 3. Anyway, let's see how this finishes.
Some people think that we're losing the ability to communicate well because of modern technology. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As I said, younger generations are always with their mobile phones, so it's not really that easy for them to communicate face-to-face with more kids. Of course they do, because they go to school or maybe nursery, so they acquire those skills, but it's getting more 50-50 every day, so digitalized are taking over the place.
I agree, but also when they're with the mobile phones, most of them communicate with other people by maybe online chatting or with WhatsApp, with other apps. I mean, I know that like the face-to-face communicating thing is the thing, but they're also communicating via electric apps and stuff.
Yeah, so maybe they are acquiring social skills from other places where they communicate differently to us, and maybe things that appear to us normally, they may not find it as normal. So you have to be careful, and acquire those social skills is really important.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That is the end of the test.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Nothing else to say. Have you got anything else to say? If so, leave a comment. Bye.